I would ask everyone to stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight's invocation is being offered by Council Member Sandra Moore.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Before I open with prayer, I want us to remember in our prayers Councilman Potts' family on the death of his father, and also Councilman Stites and his wife on the birth of their newborn. So please let's remember them. Loving Heavenly Father, we come to you this hour asking for your blessings and help as we are gathered together. We pray for guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with a spirit of joy and inspiration. Give us a desire to find ways to excel in our work. Help us to work together and encourage each other to excellence. We ask that we challenge each other to reach higher and, Father, to be the best we can be. We ask this in the name of the Lord, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Without objection, we'll suspend the calling of the roll and ask the clerk to record the names of the members present throughout the meeting. Is there a motion to adopt the minutes of our April 15th meeting? We have a motion and a second. Without objection, the minutes will stand approved as written. Madam Clerk, are there any messages from the mayor?
There are no messages from the mayor.
Thank you. Council members, if you will notice on your desk, there is a letter concerning the appointment of the Metro Auditor. We have 3 nominees, and we will be selecting one at our meeting on May the 20th. We're now at the point for elections and confirmations. Councilmember Berry.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We have several elections and confirmations this evening. Starting with the Civil Service Commission, we have the reappointment of Mr. Michael Allen. For the Board of Equalization, we have the appointment of Mr. Lynn Cawthorn and the reappointment of Ms. Jean Harrison. For the Human Relations Commission, we have the appointment of Mr. Abdi Mohammed. For the Board of Parks and Recreation, we have the appointment of Ms. Jen Garcia. For the Planning Commission, we have the reappointment of Mr. Greg Atkins. For Property Standards and Appeals Board, we have the appointment of Mr. David Morales. For the Public Library Board, we have Ms. Francie Hunt. For Social Service Commission, we have the reappointment of Dr. Frank Baum and Pastor William Harris, a reappointment. A Traffic and Parking Commission, we have the reappointment of the Honorable Feller Brown and the reappointment of Mr. John Green. With that, they were all overwhelmingly approved, 7 for, 0 against, and I would like to move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. When I call your name, please stand and remain standing. Michael Allen, Lynn Cawthorn, Jean Harrison, Abdi Mohammed, Jean Garcia, Greg Atkins, David Morales, Francie Hunt, Frank Bohm, William Harris, Feller Brown, and John Green. On behalf of the entire Metropolitan Council, thank you for your willingness to donate your time and your expertise for our great city. Thank you very much. We are now at a resolution on public hearing. It is RS 2014-1064, exempts Portland Brew Coffee located at 2605 12th Avenue South from the minimum distance requirements for obtaining a beer permit. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Allen.
Move for approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. We're now at bills on public hearing. The first one is BL 2014-725, amends the Metro zoning code pertaining to the calculation of required street setbacks for residential areas with an established development pattern. Councilmember Holloman.
Move to open the public hearing.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Anyone in opposition wishing to speak, please line up at the lectern. You will need to state your name and your address.
Good evening. I'm Scott Chambers. I live at 2307 Oxford Road. I am basically in support of the intention of the bill. I understand its source, but I have a piece of property on which I'm hoping to build a home at the corner of Wortham and Springdale. It's encumbered by a blue line stream, which takes up a good portion of the property. I've worked over the last year and a half or so with stormwater and with my neighbors getting an approved plan for a home. We've received the grading permit on the home and went to pull the building permit 2 days ago. Actually, I guess it was it was yesterday morning, to be told that this bill is pending, and it would render my lot, unfortunately, I believe, unbuildable because of the current other restrictions. So what I would ask for is an indefinite deferral while the language of the bill deals more specifically with some of these unique situations.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
My name is Britt DePriest. Address is 7044 Wild Irish Drive. My biggest problem with this bill is that it seems to be a very broad solution to an issue that different neighborhoods around the city may have. And it seems to me that the issues that these neighborhoods have may be better addressed in a more narrowly tailored way. For instance, a neighborhood can come together and put a design overlay onto their neighborhood that addresses setbacks if the neighbors are concerned about setbacks. Additionally, a property owner or a group of property owners can come together and put a setback. It's my understanding they can put this setback on their lot. They can put a platted setback onto their lot of what they would like it to be. And a single property owner can do this, or several property owners on the same block can do this. Both of these just seem like a better way to address this problem than changing the rules for the entire rest of the county. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Members of the council, Vice Mayor, thank you. My name is John Brittle. I'm a real estate broker here in Nashville. I live at 5474 Franklin Pike Circle in the southern part of the county. I've spoken with Jason already about some of the realtors' issues about this bill, and it's not just for builders and developers, it's for homeowners who bought their homes with intentions to modify them or add to them. And I respectfully would ask that it be deferred indefinitely until we can work some of these things out, not just for a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait just 1 second while we change the microphone. Thank you.
My name is Anthony Tavicoli. I live at 231 Chapel Avenue. I'm also a real estate broker and have been so for about 20 years or so. Generally, I agree with the fellows before me. I think that we need a little bit more analysis on the language. I think when you're in the field and you look at this general language that's in the bill right now, it really doesn't do justice to what's actually happening out there. It seems to be very unfair in a lot of ways. Generally, I like where the bill is going, but it just needs some tweaking to where in the field it starts to make sense. So without repeating what these guys have said, I agree with what they're talking about, and we just need an extra minute or two to look at this thing and add some language and tweak it and then get it perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Justin Hicks, and I represent the Infill Builders Council for the Middle Tennessee Home Builders Association. I also have spoken with Jason. I agree with the people before me, and The intent of the bill, I think, is good, but we do, as a council, group ourselves in the Home Builders Association, believe that the language needs to be addressed, and we ask that it be deferred indefinitely as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Holloman.
Move approval with a brief explanation.
Have a motion and a second. Councilman.
Members of the council, I just want to be clear in that introducing contextual zoning, this is not a new concept in our code. Right now, today, and for years, we have required in traditional neighborhoods where the neighborhood is already built out, that where the actual built setback of the houses on that block are up to twice as much as the statutory setback, we require you to build to that context so that you don't ride along down a street and see a house that sticks way out, inconsistent with what all the other houses in the neighborhood are built to. All this does in some of our neighborhoods, and I have some of these, I have one on Kenner that just happened. It happens in the Hillwood neighborhood. It's happening in the Creve Hall neighborhood. As some of these other more suburban neighborhoods start to have more tear downs, you're going to see more of this. It just requires, instead of twice the setback, it goes up to 3 times the statutory setback, only where that is the consistent built setback of the neighborhood. That's what this bill does. Contrary to some of the emails you've seen, it is not going to affect every lot in the city. It's going to affect a very small piece of development in this city. And where it does, all it's asking is that the infill developer build consistent with the traditional setback of the neighborhood so that you have something that makes your neighborhood not look dramatically different as you drive down the street from what's there today. That's all. Now, there is one piece of this that I agree with. It was measuring the average off of the nearest single-family homes. It's been pointed out to me that you may have contexts that are duplexes or other structures that make up that block face. I agree we need to change that, and I'm going to make that amendment in the next 2 weeks. And if there are other things that are brought that don't take away from being sure that we're consistent with the traditional setback, those are all things that we can talk about over the next 2 weeks. And if at that point we're not resolved, I'm happy to roll this bill and talk about it some more. But for now, I ask for your vote tonight on second reading with the commitment to that one amendment and certainly discussion with some of the builders about any other amendments that they propose. At this point, nobody's proposed any alternative language to me. Thank you.
Councilmember Todd.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I rise in support of Councilman Holloman's position to go ahead and approve this tonight. I think I've talked with Councilman Holloman about this. He's studied it in detail. The infill issues have been a source of concern in certain parts of Nashville. I think this bill is very precise in what it does. I mean, he has focused on just the few little things he's described. This is a major issue, and I think as responsible council people, we know we're going to need more infill. We're going to have to put it in the right places, though. We have to be careful, though, and have kind of controlled, measured growth in, certain neighborhoods, and I think this bill does that. And like Jason said, he will keep working on this the next couple of weeks. He's open to more amendments, so, but I don't think there's any reason not to keep this going tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Scott Davis.
It's kind of a tough act to follow to attorneys, especially 2 smart attorneys that do a very good job. I rise against this bill, and I do so not just because of the thousands of phone calls we all get, and not because of my confidence in Mr. Holloman, because he brings very good land policy and very good other policies. I think he does need to go back to the drawing board a little bit right now, but due to what's happening and due to the city's growth, a lot of people who live in my district who happen to be in the construction business, who are residents, have a lot of concerns. And I do like it that he's willing to push it back and do some really committed conferences with the developers and the builders. But I'm going to be voting no. Thank you.
I would just want to remind everyone that this bill is on public hearing. To hear from the public, it'll be assigned to one of our committees where we can have debate and discussion. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no.
No.
Motion passes. Next is BL 2014-731, amends 1.77 acres of the Commercial Plan Unit Development Overlay District for property located at 5207 Nolensville Pike to permit all uses of CS. Councilmember Blaylock.
Thank you. Move to open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Anyone in support wishing to speak, please line up at the lectern. Please state your name and address.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. My name is John Parker. I'm a commercial real estate broker with Cabot Real Estate in Brentwood, Tennessee, 783 Old Hickory Boulevard. I represent Mr. Ronnie McFarland, who owns the property. And the situation is that he has moved, in the 70s, his father owned the property, and he built a new building on the same piece of property. And instead of subdividing the property, he chose to just have the PUD put on it. And what's happened is that the restaurant is limited the building is limited to restaurant use only. We've marketed the property for well over a year and specifically tried to target restaurant uses. And based on the lack of creditworthiness or the size of the building, regardless, we're having trouble making anything happen with the property. He had a tenant in the property who was paying rent and just stopped, and so he has them out of that property. He didn't foresee the circumstance. It started because we had a buyer who wanted to buy the property, to put a grocery store and a meeting facility into the space, and then along that process and due diligence, we learned about the PUD that is in place. And so he may or may not be interested, but my client would actually be interested in moving his offices from Brentwood into the space. And so we've compromised and agreed with the neighborhood, with Metro Planning. Ronnie McFarland is a neighborhood guy. He's not going anywhere, and he doesn't want the uses that Metro doesn't want. He just wanted to have a little bit more flexibility so that he can do something to bring income in with the property, either through lease or sale. So that's the situation. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone in opposition wishing to speak, please come to the lectern. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Blaylock.
Thank you. Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-732 changes 3.11 acres from AR2A to CS zoning for property located at 3515 Pinhook Road. Who's handling this bill? We'll move this to the Hill to see if Councilmember Duvall comes in. Next is BL 2014-733, changes 3.02 acres from CL to CS zoning for properties located at 7417 and 7421 Old Hickory Boulevard. Councilmember Hunt.
Open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Hunt.
And I move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Next is BL 2014-734, changes .61 acres from R6 to SP zoning for properties located at 1421 Porter Road and Porter Road unnumbered, approximately 500 feet south of McKennell Drive to permit up to 6 detached dwelling units. Councilmember Anthony Davis.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Move to open the public hearing.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, would someone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. I'd ask for your approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-735 changes 1.43 acres from ORI to SP zoning for properties located at 54, 56, 58, 60, 62, and 64 Music Square West to permit a mixture of uses and up to 230 multifamily residential units or redevelopment under the ORIA zoning district. Councilmember Gilmore.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Move to open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, would anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing no one, okay, I do see someone. Please state your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Rachel Zylstra, and my address is 1015 Villa Place. I'm here representing not only myself, but the Edge Hill Village Neighborhood Association, where I not only live, but I'm the president of the board. Our association has members on both sides of Music Row, roughly between Division and Wedgwood, and the proposed Music Square Flats is right in the middle of our neighborhood, and of great interest to us. We were first approached by the developers who were seeking our support on this zoning change, but as it was originally laid out to us, it didn't include retail, and the current zoning does, and we believe that retail is an important part of a vibrant, walkable community, something that we're really striving to have. And after we met with the developers, we went back to our broader neighborhood and we surveyed, and 96%, I mean, it was really, I was impressed. 96% of our residents said that they would not support anything that didn't include retail. Retail is really important to the vision that we have for our neighborhood. And I'm really happy to say that we've been working closely with the Four-Star Group, and we've come to a mutually agreed upon compromise that would support retail and some kind of blast zone provisions, property protection provisions, and they've been really great with that. And so we would like to support this bill moving forward as the amendment that includes the retail. That's the most important thing for us, and I thank you, Council Lady Erica Gilmore, for just being really great working with us and keeping us in the loop, and the Chamber at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak, please go ahead and line up at the lectern.
Yes, my name is Casey Summer. I live at 1500 South Street, Nashville, Tennessee. And I just wanted to add that I support the position of the Neighborhood Association that Rachel shared, and to address that there had been some concerns about parking that retail might encourage, and that we were able to work as a community to reach a compromise to not approve certain types of restaurants or other uses that might elevate the parking concern, but just to provide a small amount of retail that would still add that vibrancy to the neighborhood, help with safety and walkability. So we're really pleased about that. And just to note that while we realize this is just one development, there are quite a few in the works in that area. We're lucky to live in such a vibrant town and such a vibrant neighborhood. We're thrilled about the development, but we did think it was important to voice our support of retail and of preserving walkable neighborhoods and supporting our Planning Commission's decisions going forward. So we really appreciate the developers working with us to reach a compromise, and we support the amendment that Erica is putting forward. Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Gilmore.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, neighbors. I would like to move the amendment. Okay, the amendment would be for a third. Okay, so I would just like to move for approval with a brief explanation.
We have a motion and a second.
Thank you. Can I just make a quick comment? I just want to thank the neighbors for coming out, and especially the president. I do think the neighbors of Edge Hill Neighborhood Association totally rock. And like they said, we definitely agreed upon some wonderful things. So with that, I would like to give a special shout out to James Murphy, Tom White, Nelson Crow, Rachel Zylstra, Marshall Hall, and Amy Colton. It is an example, as the Vice Mayor says, when we have public hearing and listening to the neighbors and the constituents coming forward, that this process really does work. Thank you so much.
All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-736 changes approximately 175 acres from R10 to RS10 zoning for various properties located along Brewer Drive, Tusculum Road, Tusculum Court, Ocala Drive, Ocala Court North, Burns Drive, Wessex Drive, Wessex Court, Eulalia Drive, Eulalia Court, Eulalia Circle, Towns Drive, Towns Court, Delvin Drive, Delvin Court, Sterry Court, Colmont Drive, Garden View Court, Ash Grove Drive, Ashbriar Circle, and Ashmont. Councilmember Blaylock.
Thank you. If you would move to open the public hearing, please.
Go ahead.
This is a request to change the zoning district from R10 to RS10, and the Planning Commission's recommendation was to disapprove as submitted, but to approve a substitute ordinance, including condition that property owners be able to opt out of the rezoning. Again, the zoning is currently R10, and the policy is residential low-medium. Because this area is close to both corridors and collector streets, the Planning Commission worked with the council lady to identify some strategic locations and corner lots with existing two-family structures shown here on the map, and we will be introducing a substitute with the help of the council lady before third reading to address the Planning Commission's concerns. So their recommendation was to disapprove as submitted, but to approve with a substitute ordinance.
Councilmember Blaylock.
So I am in agreement with their substitute ordinance, so I want to move for the public hearing.
I need to open public hearing. Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Anyone in support wishing to speak, please line up at the lectern. Seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Blaylock.
Move for approval, please.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Thank you.
BL 2014-737 makes provisions to approximately 26 acres of the Laughlin Springs East End Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District to various properties located along Avondale Drive, Bushnell Street, Eastland Avenue, Lakehurst Drive, Laughlin Drive, McEwen Avenue, North 17th Avenue, North 18th Street, Ordway Place, and Rudolph Avenue. Councilman Anthony Davis.
Thank you. Move to open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. I'd like to move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-738 changes .17 acres from RS5 to SP zoning for property located at 612 North 2nd Avenue to permit single-family or detached two-family units. Councilmember Scott Davis.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to open the public hearing.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-739 amends the Metro Zoning Code pertaining to the personal instruction use. Councilmember Hunt.
Madam President, open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one on either side, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Hunt.
And I move for approval, please.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-740 amends the Metro Zoning Code to create and define auction house, flea market, beer and cigarette market, and grocery store as land uses. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Neighbors. I'd like to move to open the public hearing.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, would you like to speak in support? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. I'd like to move for approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-741 amends the Metro Zoning Code pertaining to the floor area ratio within the Urban Zoning Overlay District. Councilmember Hunt.
Madam President, open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Anyone in opposition wishing to speak, please line up at the lectern. State your name and address.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm John Summers. I live at 5000 Wyoming Avenue. It's been my experience that over time, there's been efforts to take away from this council what you were elected to do, which is primarily deal with zoning issues. Floor area ratio is a key component of zoning. So in effect, this bill takes away one of the major aspects of zoning and moves it from an elected body, you, the council, who's responsive to your constituents, to an appointed, unelected Board of Zoning Appeals. My question is, and I know I can't get an answer at this point, but our question is, where does this bill come from? Why are we trying to move floor area ratio, which is such a key component of zoning, from this body, which has the legislative legal authority under state law to deal with zoning, to the Board of Zoning Appeals? There was a time when the Board of Zoning Appeals could, or at least they thought they could, or they did, change use from single-family duplex to multifamily. And Sonny West, who many of you I hear know personally, actually as zoning administrator had to sue the Board of Zoning Appeals. Kind of unique having Metro sue Metro. But that was when it was clearly established that it's not the Board of Zoning Appeals that deals with zoning, it's the Metro Council. And I would hope that you would not approve this bill. I realize there are times when people may question what you do in terms of zoning, but I think that these issues should reside with this elected body and not with the unelected Board of Zoning Appeals. This is a fundamental change, and I would hope you all would not support this. Thank you.
Seeing no one else wishing to speak, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Madam President. After much discussion about this bill and talking to various people throughout the government, I'm going to move to defer this bill, 741, indefinitely.
We have a motion and a second for indefinite deferral. I have some lights on. Do you wish to speak on the indefinite deferral? Councilmember Evans?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Tenpenny? Okay. All in favor of indefinite deferral, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Indefinite deferral passes. We're now going back to BL 2014-732, changes 3.11 acres from AR2A to CS zoning for property located at 3515 Pinhook Road. Councilmember Berry.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. On behalf of Councilman Duvall, I'd like to open the public hearing.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, would anyone in support wish to speak? If so, please line up at the lectern. Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Councilmember Berry.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. We are now to items on our consent agenda. Those on the consent are 1065 through 1081, 1083, 1084, 1085, and 1086. I will read all of these, and if there are any of those that you wish to pull, we will do it after I have read all of them. BL 2014-1065 authorizes the issuance and sale of general obligation bond anticipation notes not to exceed $500 million at any one time in the form of commercial paper and approves the necessary related agreements. 1066 authorizes the issuance and sale of general obligation anticipation notes not to exceed $200 million in the form of extendable commercial paper and approves the necessary related agreements. 1067 authorizes the issuance of electric system revenue bonds in the amount not to exceed $165 million and revenue refunding bonds in the amount not to exceed $60 million. 1068 approves an application for a state grant to the state trial courts to provide training for employees that have interaction with domestic or sexual violence victims. 1069 accepts a donation from Sears to the Metro Nashville Fire Department to purchase protective gear and rescue equipment. 1070 approves a state grant to the Metro Police Department for Internet Crimes Against Children Unit. 1071 approves a grant from the Nashville Bar Foundation to the Community Education Commission to provide for a series of free legal classes for the public. 1072 approves an application for a grant from the Greater Nashville Regional Council to the Metro Social Services Commission to provide transportation for eligible seniors and disabled persons. 1073 accepts an anonymous grant to the Metro Social Services Commission for the House Nashville campaign to move people from the streets to supportive housing. 1074 approves an application for a state grant to the Metro Parks Department to be applied toward the purchase of 60 acres of property on Pettis Road for the Mill Creek Greenway. 1075 approves the application for a state grant to the Metro Parks Department to be applied toward the purchase of 60 acres of property on Pettis Road for the Mill Creek Greenway. 1076 approves an annual grant from the Tennessee State Library and Archives to the Nashville Public Library System for library services to the hearing impaired. 1077 approves a Sixth Amendment to the grant from Vanderbilt University to the Board of Parks and Recreation to collaborate on the Growing Right Onto Wellness program to stop obesity in preschoolers. 1078 approves an agreement between Metro and the State Department of Transportation for the reimbursement of expenses incurred during the May 2010 flood for transportation infrastructure damage. 1079 approves an amendment to a lease between Metro Government and Parkway Towers LLC for office space at 404 James Robertson Parkway to add space for use by the Public Defender's Office. 1080 authorizes Tin Roof to construct and install an aerial encroachment at 316 Broadway. 1081 approves the election of certain notaries public for Davidson County. 1083 proclaims the month of May 2014 as Bike Month in Metro Nashville and Davidson County and welcomes the Tennessee Bike Summit to Nashville. 1084 recognizes the 125th anniversary of the opening of the Hermitage as the presidential home and the upcoming bicentennial of Andrew Johnson's victory at the Battle of New Orleans. 1085 recognizes the 80th anniversary celebration of the Nashville Amateur Radio Club, and 1086 recognizes the 15th Annual Mayor's Youth Summit. Do we need to pull any of these for discussion? Seeing none, I will need some committee reports. Councilmember Stein.
1065, 1066, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, and 79 were all approved by Budget and Finance 9-4 and none against.
Councilmember Glover.
Education voted on 1071, 4-4, 0 against.
Councilmember Maynard.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Health and Hospitals voted for 1072, 1073, and 1074, 6-4, and 0 against.
Councilmember Tiger.
Parks and Library Recreation approved 1075, 3 and 0, and 1076, 1077, 4 and 0.
Thank you. Councilmember Hunt.
Planning and Zoning approved 2014, 1079 and 1080. 8-4 and 0 against.
Thank you. Councilmember Purdue?
Public Safety approved 1069, 1075 to 0.
Thank you. Councilmember Dominic?
Public Works Committee approved 1078 and 1080, 5-4 and 0 against.
Thank you. Councilmember Berry?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Rules and Confirmations approved 1081, 1083, 1084, 1085, 1086, 7-4, 0 against. And with that, I move approval of the consent agenda.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. I know. Okay. We will now go back to the one that is remaining that was not on the consent agenda. RS 2014-1082 requests the Metropolitan Development and Housing Agency to create a redevelopment plan for a portion of District 5 and requests the Industrial Development Board to explore the creation of an economic impact plan for the same area. Councilmember Scott Davis.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to defer by rule.
I need a committee report, please. Councilman Stein.
Budget and Finance voted to defer by Rule 9-4, none against.
And we have a motion to defer. We have a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. We have a late filed resolution. Councilmember Stein, what is the nature of the emergency?
The grant information from the state was received late, and we have to act on this so that we can get the $140,000 at this meeting, or else we're not going to get it.
Okay. This resolution accepts the state grant to the Election Commission for the lease of 100 Invotronic voting machines for the August and November elections in 2014. Councilman Stein.
Do I need to move to suspend the rules? To hear
Yes,
this?
you do.
I would so move.
Is there any objection to a suspension of the rules? There is none. I've read the caption, so.
Thank you. Budget and Finance approved 9-4 and none against, and I would ask the council to approve this resolution so we can get the $140,000, which is going to be used for 100 voting machines to be used in August and November.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Before we move on, I would like for the members of the Mayor's Youth Council that are with us tonight to please stand and be recognized. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Wow.
We're now at bills on introduction and first reading. Are there any that need to be pulled for consideration? Is there a motion for their approval? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. We have a few late filed bills on introduction and first reading. Councilmember Moore. What is the nature of the emergency?
This is to keep track for the June public hearing, Vice Mayor.
Okay, this Councilmember Moore's bill changes 7.3 acres from IWD to SP zoning for properties located at 610 Merritt Avenue, 1234, 1236, and 1238 Martin Street. Councilmember Moore.
I move to suspend the rules. Was
there any objection to a suspension of the rules? Seeing none, go ahead.
I move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Councilmember Gilmore, I think you have two late filed bills.
Definitely one. We'll start with that one first.
What is the nature of the one for Music Square?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. This is the overlay district. It's scheduled to be heard by the Planning Commission on May the 22nd, 2014, prior to the anticipated date of June the 3rd, 2014 public hearing. A copy of the amendment is attached for your review. So therefore, I'm asking for your support as I request a suspension of the rule number 11.
Is there any objection to a suspension of the rules? Seeing none, go right ahead.
Okay, I move for approval.
It changes 1.05 acres from CF to ORI and ORI to SP zoning for properties located at 1, 7, 9, and 11 Music Square West to permit a mixed-use development. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Councilmember Gilmore, you have one with the cultural heritage overlay.
Yes, ma'am. And once again, I'm asking for a suspension of the rules so they can be heard at public hearing, and I request from my council members suspension of the rules number 11.
Any objection? Seeing none, this bill creates the Music City Cultural Heritage Overlay District to approximately 17.22 acres of property located on Broadway, 2nd Avenue North, and Printers Alley. Councilmember Gilmore.
I will move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
So I just wanted to make sure that we have the two, one for the music row and one for the musical. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you so much.
We did too.
All right then, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
We're now at bills on second reading. BL 2014-742 amends the Metro Code to exempt beer permit applicants from the minimum distance requirement from residential property if the applicant's primary residence is connected to the establishment for which a permit is sought. Councilmember Hunt.
Committee reports, please.
Councilmember Purdue.
Public Safety voted 5-0 to approve.
Councilmember Hunt.
Move for approval, please.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no.
Bless you.
Motion passes. Bless you. BL 2014-743 amends the Metro Code to reduce the minimum seating capacity for eating establishments to obtain a retailer on-sale beer permit. Councilmember Anthony Davis.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Committee report, please.
Councilmember Purdue.
Public Safety voted 5-0 to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. I'd like to move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-744 approves the form of a license agreement to use Metro government property for network HUDs by Google Fiber Company. Councilmember Stein.
Committee report.
Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Madam President. Planning and zoning approve 8-4-0 against.
Thank you, Councilmember Stein.
Budget and Finance approved 9-4, none against. I move approval with a brief comment.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman.
Thank you. I assume Councilman Anthony Davis will want to speak to this, and I appreciate his leadership. I'm speaking to this because my 22-year-old who's graduating from college next week, who was born 10 days before I was first elected in 1991, I have finally found a bill that he has contacted me about that he thinks I am a sponsor of that is cool. And so, and he also thinks it's hysterical because, as he would tell you, I am the most technologically inept human on earth, and the fact that I'm a sponsor of this bill with Google is a source of amusement to him as well. Clearly, this bill dealing with city property for the structures to house their fiber devices is the completion of our checklist to put us in competition to be a city that Google works with, and it's going to be a tremendous thing for our city. And once again, I thank Councilman Davis for his leadership. And I renew my motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Councilman Stein and Vice Mayor. Just really brief, we had some great discussion in budget on the topic, and I agree with everything Councilman Stein said. It is a very cool bill, but just for a couple of concerns that I did hear floating around, I just want to remind everybody it is a preliminary HUT license approval. It's not the actual specific places yet, and We did have some good discussion on the digital divide as well, and continue to get more information on that. Google, I think, will be a great partner in that regard. It is a broader discussion that we need to continue to have for our community. And with Google offering possibly free Wi-Fi for the city, along with some other measures, I think it's going to be a really neat thing. So thank you, and I also move for approval.
Councilmember Evans.
I'd like to thank the sponsors, and just for the purpose of the record, Councilman Davis, I did hear from the Friends of Warner Park who had expressed some concern about the location of the huts, and just for the purpose of the record, the Google folks did let me know that no natural areas in the city are on potential list for the park, for the huts. And Councilman Stein, I just want to tell you that my 15-year-old put his hand on my shoulder when Google was first announced and said, "Mom, I want you to do everything you can to make this happen." So I got a cool increase in my cool factor too. Thanks.
Councilmember Tigard.
There's nothing that could increase my cool factor, so.
Thank you.
But I appreciate Mr. Reed getting back with us that the Google Fiber or Google Cable will carry the SEC network, so that is another huge plus for this.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of this really cool bill, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-745 amends the Geographic Information System street and alley centerline layer by abandoning the right-of-way and easements for an unnumbered alley from Lee Avenue to alley number 102 between Hermitage Avenue and Rutledge Avenue. Councilmember Gilmore.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Committee reports.
Councilmember Hunt.
Planning and Parking, Planning and Zoning approved Bill 745, 940 against.
Councilmember Dominic.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Public Works approved 745, 5-4, and 0 against.
Thank you. Councilmember Gilmore.
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-746 declares 7 parcels of Metro government-owned property to be surplus and approves the disposition of the property. Councilmember Stein.
Committee report.
Councilmember Hunt.
Planning and Zoning approved Bill 715, 940 against.
Councilmember Stein.
Budget and Finance approved 9-4, none against. I move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. We're now at bills on third reading. BL 2014-697 amends the Metro Code to exempt existing on-premises beer permit holders from the distance requirements regarding the sale of beer near school property when a new school locates within 100 feet of the existing establishment. Councilmember Blaylock.
Thank you. I move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-715 amends the Metro Zoning Code pertaining to the zoning application fees and public hearing notice costs for amendments to the official zoning map initiated by a member or members of the Metropolitan Council. Councilmember Blaylock.
I move for approval, please.
I need a committee report. Councilmember Hunt.
Planning and Zoning approved Bill 715, 940 against.
Thank you. Councilmember Blaylock, you have a substitute to move on this one?
I do. I have a substitute, and I want to move the substitute, please.
We have a motion and a second. Councilmember Claiborne, did you wish to speak on the substitute?
Yes. I'm fully supportive of what the council member is trying to do. As a district council member, I certainly understand the impact here. I think that what she's trying to accomplish can possibly be taken care of as we move through the budget process. I would respectfully like to ask the council lady to defer this measure until we can go through the budget process to see if in fact we can address the cost of these measures. And if we can't, then it would still be in play, and there's certainly the opportunity to move it forward at that point.
Councilmember Garrett.
Madam Vice Mayor, I believe he had asked the sponsor a question. I was just going to see if the sponsor was going to
Councilmember Blaylock.
Well, I've thought this through, and I do not want to defer this. I think that if the council wants to do this, then we'll go forward tonight. And if it does not pass tonight, and the head of budget and finance wants to put it in the bill to complete the task, or put it in the budget, then we can do it at that time.
Councilmember Garrett.
Madam, with all due respect, I would make the motion that we move to defer this indefinitely, and or
we're on the substitute.
Oh, we're on the substitute.
Taken care of first.
Okay.
Would you explain the substitute then?
Yes, the substitute incorporates some of the existing code back into the bill so that the filing fee, the application fee for down zones and for overlays would still be exempt on an unlimited basis. So you would not be limited in the number of those you could seek per year. But the publication and notice and signs and written notices would be covered one application per council member per year. So the filing fee would be waived for those down zones on an unlimited basis, but you would be limited to one public notice for free per year for each council member.
Madam Speaker, I would like to be recognized, I guess, after we adopt the substitute.
So noted. Councilmember Evans.
Yeah, a few months ago, I had a rezoning request in a district, and there was some concerns about the rezoning because of some wanted land use policy changes in the neighborhood to refine what had come out of the community planning process, because it's really kind of hard for people to look down the road when you're doing a community plan and actually see implementation. And at the time, I made a point that the neighborhood could not amend the land use policy and some other things without having raised money, which means that rezonings in certain districts in certain parts of this city and changes in land use in certain parts of this city are more likely to happen than in other parts of this city. And at the time, I asked you to support Devette's bill when she brought it forward. So I'm asking for that again, because in my view, I know we have budgets and we have things we need to do, but government has to be available on an equal basis to everybody, not just those with rich neighborhoods. So I ask you to support Council Lady Devette. Thank you.
Councilmember Bedney.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm also raising in support of David Blaylock's legislation. I think, with all due respect to the other council members, they are asking for us to put the carriage before the horse. I mean, we would ask the police department to stop acting because we don't have money for them to do their work, and I think we are here to do a job, and we need the tools to do it. And so, really, we should pass this and then work really hard at funding it. Thank you very much.
We have a motion and a second on the substitute. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The substitute passes. Councilmember Blaylock.
I move to pass the bill as amended.
We have a motion and a second on the bill as substituted. Councilmember Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I would make the motion to move this to the second regular meeting in June to let council members know this. First of all, I wouldn't be for this to begin with. The last thing I think anybody here you would want is for 40 council members to be able to put a bill up here once a year and pass it, in other words, and have it not have the fees involved. Now, it's a lot easier to take this money, and when all we talk about is money, is get this back into the Planning Commission's budget. And I think the chairman and those members that are on the Budget and Finance Committee, if we don't do that, then we'll all be for the bill and we'll go forward with it. But the second regular meeting in June is probably when we're going to be taking up the third reading of the budget. And you have my commitment that I will do everything I can to get those funds back in. As an old district council member, we didn't have to do what you have to do now because the planning commission didn't have the money. But district council members nor at-large council members need to have the ability to give away that much the funds are being out. Some council, without being, Madam Chair Lady, without just pinning it down to anybody, that is giving a council member the opportunity to take funds from somebody during the election, and then that person may come around and want to get a zoning bill passed, and you could do it for free, and you could imagine what the perception would be if that situation existed. So I'm just...
Your motion is to defer until when?
Second regular meeting in June, which would be when we would consider on third reading the primary budget. And if this money for what you want to do is not in the budget by then you and I will certainly be together. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman Stein, do you wish to speak on the deferral?
I do, thank you. I rise in support of the bill, and I rise in support of the deferral, which I guess is where Councilman Garrett is, but I'm not sure whether he's in support of the bill or not. I'm in support of the bill. The reality of this is that there is no money in the Planning Commission budget today to fund this between now and June 30th. There is no money there. There is tremendous support for this on the council, and I promise you, as the budget chair, I will do all in my power to support this council to put the appropriate funds in our budget to begin July 1 so that we can implement this. But the fact of the matter is that if tonight this doesn't get 27 votes, there is nothing to put in the budget because there will be no legislation before us and this won't be there. So that's why I think it's critical that we wait till we track this with the budget, at which point we know the money's going to be there. I believe we can get the 27 votes plus to pass this at that time, and it'll start July 1. All we are losing, ladies and gentlemen, is the rest of this month and the month of June in terms of implementing this. But I'm telling you, my understanding of the Planning Commission's budget is it's not going to be implemented anyway because the funds aren't there to do it. Now, there's an argument out there from somebody outside this council that we should bring a supplement to pay for this. Okay, we can bring it and file it for our next meeting, and then we are essentially we are adding money to a budget in June for 1 month of the year, when I'm not sure I see what the damage is to start this program July 1. But nevertheless, I commit to this council to do everything in my power with all of the information that comes before us to see that this is appropriately funded in the next budget. But I urge this council to wait until the middle of June, when we know that we have put it in the budget, to start this program July 1.
Councilmember Todd.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilman Stein's exactly right. This is, for all the reasons that Council Lady Evans said, this is too important not to let this bill have a chance to pass. And if it's voted down tonight, then we don't have anything to put in the budget. So I'm for deferral, and I would call the question.
You can't. You made a comment before you called the previous question. Councilmember Weiner.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Would it be appropriate to ask the council member if she would amend her bill to state an effective date of July 1? Would that solve the problem?
Mr. Cooper.
Well, I think the argument is that regardless of the effective date, if there's no money in the budget effective July 1st, it's not going to be implemented. So I think the argument from those making the motion to defer is that if it tracks with the budget, at that point, we'll know that the money's there and the legislation can be approved and implemented accordingly. If I'm wrong, correct me, but I think that's the position.
Did that answer your question? Councilmember Evans?
My question got answered. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Blaylock.
I have no problem waiting until July 1st, if I could amend it on the floor for that, but it doesn't sound like that would satisfy the people in opposition. So I would like to move this bill as amended.
Well, we have
a motion to defer first. I thought you wanted to comment. We have a motion and a second to defer till the second regular meeting in June. We were going to need a machine vote. Madam Clerk, would you close the machine and tally the vote?
Thank you. I have 22 for, 12 against, 0 abstentions.
The motion to defer passes. We'll move on now to BL 2014-726. Authorizes the purchasing agent and Metro Employee Benefit Board to extend the current medical plan contracts with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee and Connecticut General Life Insurance Company for up to 2 years. Councilmember Stein.
Just want to do it their way.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-727 amends the Metro Code to include the Metro Archivist as a member of the Public Records Commission. Councilmember Berry.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We moved approval it's already been approved, so I move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-728 amends the Metro Code to extend the expiration dates of the additional 50-cent per room hotel occupancy privilege tax used to support large events. Councilmember Stein.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-729 approves a lease agreement between Metro Government and KIP Nashville for the use of the former Highland Heights Middle School located at 123 Douglas Avenue. Councilmember Scott Davis.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I believe all committee reports are in, that I very happily move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2014-730 authorizes the Director of Public Property to accept a conservation easement for use as parts of the Whites Creek Greenway. Councilmember Hunt. Councilmember Hunt. 730.
Move for approval, please.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.